My name is Eric Scattereggia, and this is my drum sample pack. In this pack, all of the drums have been recorded to analog tape, specifically the Tascam 388. The pack contains over 50 loops, grooves, and drum fills recorded at various tempos so that different artists or producers can use the drum loops in their projects. There's some variety in the genres, but it leans towards indie rock and pop. For the pack, I've used 3 different vintage drum kits from the 1960s, recorded with vintage mics. A little bit about the Tascam 388. In the late 1970s and mid-1980s, companies like Tascam, Fostex, and Akai were capitalizing on cassette tape technology. Before the 388, Tascam had something called the Porta-1, which was a small cassette recorder where you could plug a couple microphones in, you had a small mixer, and it would record directly onto cassette. The sound quality was somewhat limited because of the fidelity of recording onto cassette. So Fostex then comes out with the A8, which was a standalone tape machine, 1/4-inch tape, 8 tracks. Tascam then enters with the 388, also 1/4-inch tape and 8 tracks, but now you have a built-in mixer with EQ, fully functional all-in-one semi-pro recording solution. This was targeted more for the home and project studios. They considered this to be pretty portable, even though this thing weighs about 100 pounds. When it came out, it had mixed reviews. People thought it was a great idea, portable, somewhat compact, easy to use, but the sound quality wasn't that of a professional studio. However, that same complaint has become the reason it's such a popular machine. People like things to be a little bit dirtier these days, especially in genres like indie rock and pop. Artists such as the Black Keys, Mac DeMarco, Kelly Stoltz, and Madlib have all made popular records using 388, thus reviving its popularity. So this is one of the setups that was used for the pack. This is a 1960s Slingerland drum set. And here we can see there's some muffling on the drum heads. I was going for, in this particular case, a very dead and punchy sound. The way I'm set up is sort of my take on the Glyn Johns mic setup, where we have an overhead here. This is an RCA 6203. We have another vintage RCA here. This is a KB2. These are equidistant from the snare drum, creating this little bit of a triangle. We have a Sennheiser 421 on the floor tom, and then we have this EV RE15 microphone on the rack tom. We also have SM58s on the top and bottom of the snare drum. This is a vintage Ludwig snare drum. And then just a 57 on the hi-hat. The next step was to set the recording levels. The more level we push into recording the tape, the more saturation and tape compression is going to happen. After everything's recorded to tape, it then gets transferred into Pro Tools, and I end up with these long audio files. I go through, and in this case, I will quantize my favorite performances at the designated BPM using Beat Detective in Pro Tools. This way, my performance is nice and tight. Okay, and of course, I go through and I mix my tracks using a variety of plugins, all kinds of stuff, UAD, Waves, Kush Audio, IK Multimedia, really anything to get the job done. On the way in, I'm also doing some, since I recorded using EQ on the Tascam, a lot of my EQ has already been accomplished in the analog realm. But of course, I'm doing more here in the box.
I have my tracks bussed appropriately, doing some noise gating to get rid of some extra tape hiss that I don't want. And then, of course, my mix bus. I have a lot going on here, which does a lot of the heavy lifting. Some filtering, little bus compression and EQ, little more EQ, some limiting here. So there you have it. I have to go through and make sure when I'm using loops that everything loops perfectly. So that's why I do all the quantizing, and the mixing is catered towards whatever sound I'm going for on that particular beat.